remote island, just over 2,000 residents. For more than a century, it was considered a sanctuary, a place untouched by crime. People left their doors unlocked, and the loudest sound most nights was the wind rolling off the sea. But everything changed one rainy afternoon. Picture this: the relentless downpour blurring the outline of the cliffs, water streaming along empty roads. In a ditch just outside town, a local fisherman stumbles upon something that has no place in this quiet world. A black tarpaulin bag, heavy, out of place, soaked through by the rain. The fisherman hesitates, heart pounding. Inside, he finds the unimaginable, the lifeless body of a woman marked by 64 wounds. On her skin, investigators would soon discover something odd: microscopic flecks of blue and white paint, almost invisible to the naked eye. Questions swirl. Who could have committed such violence here, and why? The island, once peaceful, now felt changed. Residents looked at each other with new suspicion. If such a thing could happen here, was anyone truly safe? And what could those blue and white flecks mean? As rumors rippled through the close-knit community, one fact became clear: this was no accident. The investigation would soon peel back layers of secrets, some buried deeper than anyone imagined. But on that first night, with the rain still falling and the black bag under the streetlights, only one thing was certain: paradise was lost. Who was this woman? And what could drive someone to such brutality on an island where everyone thought they knew their neighbor? The answers, as it turned out, would be anything but simple. To understand how a tranquil island could become the setting for such a shocking act, we have to go back, before the rain, before the discovery. This is where Janelle's story begins. Janelle wasn't born here. She came from Sydney, seeking what so many dream of but few ever find: a fresh start, far from the chaos of city life. Friends say she was drawn by the promise of peace. She took a job at a small hotel on the island's main street, blending in with the quiet rhythm of daily life. Every morning, she walked the same route, rain or shine, through winding coastal roads and sunlit trails. It was a routine that made her feel safe, or so she thought. Her parents, proud but cautious, visited not long before everything changed. They walked with her, met her neighbors, maybe even felt a glimmer of relief that their daughter had chosen such a safe haven. The islanders, too, were used to new faces. Some came and went, but most stayed, drawn into the close-knit web of shared stories and quiet evenings. But behind the calm facade, Janelle's life was more complicated than it seemed. In her private diary, there were hints of conflict, friction with a few locals, tensions that seemed trivial on the surface but could fester in a place where privacy was a luxury. A glance, a word out of place could turn into gossip. And on an island where everyone knows everyone, old resentments have a way of lingering just out of sight. Was it loneliness or something darker that followed Janelle through those winding streets? Even in paradise, the past is never far behind. That week, as rain clouds gathered on the horizon, no one, not Janelle, not her parents, not her neighbors, could have predicted how quickly peace would shatter. On islands like this, secrets rarely stay hidden for long. In the days after the discovery, investigators searched for answers, and the first clues emerged not from forensic evidence, but from the pages of a simple notebook, Janelle's diary. Beneath neat handwriting, investigators found traces of something unsettling. Entries described arguments, strained encounters with neighbors, and a web of complicated relationships. In a community of just 2,000, Every friendship and every feud mattered. Janelle's notes hinted at friction with a handful of locals, small misunderstandings that had grown into open tension. Perhaps it was jealousy. Perhaps old wounds reopened by the arrival of an outsider. The investigation soon revealed just how tightly woven and tangled this community truly was. One neighbor remembered a heated exchange outside the grocery store. Another recalled rumors swirling about Janelle's private life. The boundaries between friend and foe blurred. In a place this small, the same faces appear day after day. What happens when trust begins to erode? Who can you rely on? And who might be hiding something? Some pointed fingers at Janelle's boyfriend, others at a former housemate. Even her relationship with her landlord had its complexities. But as investigators interviewed more islanders, a chilling possibility surfaced. On an island where everyone knows everyone, motives for resentment were everywhere. No one was above suspicion. Did someone let anger simmer too long? Did rivalry or jealousy finally boil over? Or was there something deeper at play, a secret no one dared speak aloud? These were the cracks forming beneath the island's peaceful exterior. And as investigators would soon learn, those cracks ran deeper than anyone had imagined. March 14th. The day started out like any other, with the sun breaking through early morning clouds and the sea calm in the bay. By midday, the weather began to change, and so did the course of Janelle's life. According to her routine, Janelle finished her shift at the hotel sometime between 11 and noon. Surveillance cameras along the main street caught her exiting the building, umbrella in hand, before heading off on her familiar walking route. Witnesses recalled seeing her not far from the harbor, chatting briefly with the driver of a white car. The conversation seemed ordinary, almost friendly. But moments later, a distant scream echoed across the deserted road, heard only by a single passerby. Was it a call for help? Or something else entirely? No one could say for sure. By 3:30 p.m., the island was lashed by a heavy rainstorm. The roads emptied. Raindrops hammered against tin rooftops and flooded ditches along the outskirts of town. That's when the fishermen found the black tarpaulin, water pooling on top, the outline of a body just visible beneath the folds. Later analysis of the tarp would prove crucial. Rainwater had already collected, meaning the body must have been placed there before the downpour began. The timing was tight. Whoever committed this act moved fast, hiding their crime before the skies opened. As night fell, emergency lights flickered in the rain. Officers cordoned off the scene, careful not to disturb a single footprint in the mud. On the victim's skin, police found those strange flecks of blue and white paint, a microscopic detail, overlooked by the naked eye, but soon to become a signature clue. Every hour that passed, suspicion and fear grew on the island. If this could happen here, who was safe? And as the timeline came into focus, one question lingered. Had the killer planned every move? Or was this a crime of impulse, covered in panic before the storm? As dawn broke over the rain-soaked island, the investigation shifted into high gear. For a community unaccustomed to violence, the arrival of forensic teams and police specialists was both reassuring and unsettling. Every square foot of the crime scene was scrutinized. What would the evidence reveal? First, the black tarpaulin bag, heavy, slick with rainwater, and covered in 10 blurred fingerprints. The prints were too smudged for an immediate match, but investigators took samples all the same. Nearby, shards of broken glass sparkled in the mud. On closer inspection, the fragments carried a faint engraving, the name of a foreign liquor brand, uncommon on the island. Could this glass be a weapon, or just a discarded clue? Then there were the microscopic traces, blue and white flecks embedded in Janelle's skin. Under the microscope, forensic experts confirmed the paint was industrial, the kind used on vehicles or machinery. This detail, seemingly trivial, would prove pivotal. DNA samples were taken from the scene, including a strand of hair found on the tarp. To their surprise, initial tests showed female DNA, but not a match to Janelle. A second, unknown woman? The mystery deepened. Island authorities did what few police forces ever attempt. They collected fingerprints and DNA samples from all 2,700 residents and visitors. It was a massive undertaking, one that spanned weeks and drew headlines across the country. Yet every sample was run through the database, and everyone came back negative. No matches for the prints. No matches for the mysterious DNA. Suspects were questioned, then cleared. Janelle's boyfriend, her former tenant, even her own parents, all scrutinized, all ultimately excluded by forensic evidence. The island's sense of safety eroded further. Was the killer a stranger, someone passing through? Or was the answer hiding in plain sight, just beyond the reach of science? For nearly 2 years, the case seemed frozen in time. Leads dried up. The forensic evidence, so promising at first, brought investigators only frustration. Even advanced matching software failed to identify the fingerprints or mysterious DNA. The island's residents returned to their routines, but the shadow of the crime lingered. Would the truth ever surface? Then, in a moment of old-fashioned perseverance, a detective made a fateful decision. Review every fingerprint by hand. No software, just eyes, patience, and the stubborn belief that something had been missed. It was slow, grueling work, day after day, print after print, until finally, a partial match emerged. The fingerprint belonged to Glenn McNeil, a chef who had lived on the island at the time of the murder. He was quiet, well-liked by some, barely noticed by others. There was one detail that now stood out. McNeil had driven a white Honda, the same car seen by witnesses near Janelle, on the day she died. He left the island abruptly, just days after the killing. Police tracked down McNeil's abandoned car on the mainland. Inside, forensic teams made chilling discoveries. Blue and white paint, a perfect match to the flecks found on Janelle. Shards of glass from a production batch identical to the ones embedded in her wounds. And in the trunk, hair and biological traces sent to an advanced laboratory in the United States. The results were clear. The hair belonged to Janelle. Back at McNeil's old home, more evidence surfaced, signs he had tried to erase any connection to the crime. But the science held steady. Piece by piece, the puzzle fit together. Had Glenn McNeil planned everything? Or was it, as he would later claim, a terrible mistake that spiraled out of control? The island held its breath as the truth finally began to emerge. In 2006, nearly 2 years after the island's peace was shattered, Glenn McNeil was arrested and brought to trial. The small courtroom was packed not just with legal teams and journalists, but with neighbors, former friends, and families who wanted answers. Some still struggled to believe that someone they once shared meals with could be responsible for such a brutal act. During questioning, McNeil offered a story that startled the court. He claimed he had accidentally run Janelle over and, panicked, stabbed her in a frenzy. For a moment, there was a hush. Could it have been an accident, gone horribly wrong? But the forensic evidence told a different story. The number and nature of the wounds, the attempt to hide the body, the microscopic clues left behind all pointed to premeditation and intent. The medical examiner dismissed McNeil's claims, concluding that the violence was no accident. On March 9, 2007, the verdict was handed down. Glenn McNeil was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 24 years. It was a rare, severe judgment for a community that had prided itself on its lack of crime. For some, justice felt served. For others, there were still unanswered questions, still doubts about what had truly happened on that rainy afternoon. But time has a way of reopening wounds. In 2024, after serving less than 2 decades, McNeil was granted early release on the condition that he be deported back to New Zealand. Even then, he refused to accept full responsibility, shifting blame, insisting that others were involved. For the islanders, closure proved elusive. Justice, it seemed, was as complicated as the web of relationships that had tied them all together. And in the end, even a verdict could not erase the scars left behind. Years have passed since the storm that exposed a hidden darkness on the island. The tarpaulin bag, the blue and white flecks of paint, the confusion and fear. These memories linger, etched into the collective mind of a place that once felt untouchable. The community, though outwardly restored, will never be the same. Some lessons are hard learned. Forensic technology, once hailed as the infallible answer, hit its limits in this case. Databases failed to match the fingerprints. DNA, despite being collected from every resident and visitor, pointed only to dead ends. It was only through human persistence, eyes scanning fingerprints one by one, hours spent in quiet determination, that the truth emerged. In a world obsessed with progress and algorithms, the most vital breakthroughs sometimes still belong to patience, to the human touch. This case also exposed the fragility of trust in a small community. For decades, people believed that knowing your neighbor was the same as knowing their heart. But beneath every smile and polite greeting, there are layers unseen: resentment, jealousy, secrets, things that can simmer quietly until the unthinkable happens. When the verdict was read, there was no applause, no sense of victory. The island had lost more than its innocence. Relationships had fractured, some never to heal. Janelle's family returned home, changed forever, carrying with them questions that may never be answered. Glenn McNeil, deported and still denying full responsibility, left a legacy of uncertainty and pain. But perhaps the final lesson is this: even in places where everyone knows everyone, truth can be elusive. And when science fails, it is perseverance, the willingness to look again, to not give up, that brings answers to light. This tragedy reminds us: trust must be cherished, justice must be pursued, and sometimes the hardest truths lie closest to home. A remote island, untouched by serious crime for over a century, was forever changed by the brutal killing of an outsider, Janelle. The investigation that followed pushed both science and community to their limits. Forensic breakthroughs failed, and trust was shattered. Only through relentless human determination did the truth emerge, revealing the hidden fractures within an idyllic community. Justice, when it finally arrived, was imperfect and incomplete. Years later, wounds still linger, a stark reminder that darkness can strike even in paradise. If you found this story gripping, subscribe and turn on notifications for more unsolved mysteries and deep dives into the world's most haunting true crime cases. Like and share to help keep these stories alive, and to remind us all that justice sometimes depends on never giving up.